On today's show, the San Diego Padres start off their series against the Miami Marlins with a nice old W, and also recapping a little bit of that very disappointing Yankees series, answering some of your questions, including on Jurickson Profar, the Padres bullpen, and much, much more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, May 28th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly, especially lately, not always the most, Javier Arraez. You may be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, where I write about the Padres, but also general baseball stuff, and have a podcast all about general baseball stuff called Baseball versus the World. You could check that out, too, if you'd like. This week's episode, an Alex Rodriguez Awards show. Oh, yeah, it's a bunch of silliness. But if you just want my Padres work and all my tweets about them, at Javipeno on Twitter, JAVIIPENO, the best handle in the game. Today's episode is going to be a fun one, guys. We are talking about yesterday's game, the first against the Marlins, this 3-game set. A series that I know this sounds dumb. I know it sounds cliche. I understand. But it really feels like it's important. And the biggest reason that it's important is because we've complained about how the Padres, they don't play well, for one thing, against bad teams. And then, the Rockies are kind of the leading example for that. But if you're not going to play super great against the good teams, then you have to make up for it and just get yourself a little bit over the hump of 500, which they did yesterday with a win. And we're going to start off with that game before we talk a little bit about that Yankees series from this weekend that I will only highlight the biggest things. We didn't have an episode yesterday. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. And we also missed Thursday, but don't worry. We're back to a regular schedule now, so don't worry about that, but didn't have an episode yesterday. So not going to dive too deep into each Yankees game, but I just have some tidbits that I think are worth talking about. Today's episode, guys, though, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And let me tell you, folks, this Padres team, what's been one thing about them this year that everyone has been pointing out is why are they so bad at home? Why can they not hit when they're at Petco Park? I think I tweeted this over the weekend that they lead the league in disappointing performances in front of sold-out crowds. They tend to do that a lot. Thankfully, they did not do that on a Monday afternoon sort of game, at least afternoon in San Diego. Not for a schmuck like me. But the Padres win this one by a score of 2-1, and you got a couple really nice, I think, little things that happen in this game. Number one, it's always good when this Padres team wins a close game. Was it pretty? No. Obviously not. This was a team that they should be absolutely beating the crap out of, especially since you just traded and acquired their best player in Luis Arraez just a couple weeks ago. But I really do think that this is one of those games that was ugly, but I don't really care because when you look at this team over the past few years, and especially last year, even the ugly games tended not to go the Padres' way. I'm sorry for my video listeners. I was cleaning my glasses, but I think that any win that they can get is a big one. And I think that there's two things about this game. Actually, three. I'd say probably three. And most of it has to do with pitching. Number one, Michael King. Really nice bounce back start from him. He's been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde the entire season. But as we talked about last week, one of the things that was so frustrating about him is that he had that historically good, like genuinely historically good, like one of the three best starting pitching performances by a Padres starting pitcher. I believe it was Sarah Langs who tweeted this, of the generation, like of since the 2000s, right? Like Jake Peavy, Blake Snell, like that's kind of the tier he was on when he had 12 strikeouts or 11 strikeouts against the Dodgers and just completely shut them out on that Friday night. It was awesome. Like he super bounced back after getting absolutely, torched a couple starts before then. And then he followed that up by getting destroyed by the Rockies. He gave up 6 earned runs against the Rockies. That was really frustrating. Follows it up with 6 2/3 against the Reds, where he gave up 3 runs, but he was okay. And he's one of those guys that you just don't know what version is going to show up, right? Like, that's why I'm saying the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. That's kind of what he's been this year. And what's even more frustrating is that when you look at the stuff, Michael King has clearly shown that he's got some stuff. On Friday's show, someone actually got annoyed at my guy Shane pointing out that it looks like the Yankees fleeced the Padres for Juan Soto, which I pushed back on. But Michael King has been a little bit disappointing. But In this game, 5 innings, only 1 earned run on 3 hits, 1 walk, and 7 Ks. So kept the control really good. It was his best in terms of that in a while since his start against the Cardinals, actually. So that was very nice. Or I'm not the Cardinals. Every time I see Arizona, I keep thinking Cardinals because of football, and I keep forgetting it's St. Louis here. But anyway, Michael King looked solid, and he generated a lot of whiffs in this game, and I love seeing some whiffs, and that's been kind of the story of him all season. He always has starts like this, and it's always the damn changeup. And by the way, there was some video flying today. The changeup, the movement, particularly from the inside of the batter to outside. I don't know how to explain that, but the vertical movement kind of on his changeup was just really, really awesome. 8 whiffs on 23 swings in this one, and then 6 whiffs on 16 swings from his sinker. Just all of his off-speed movement stuff was just amazing, and I think that that's awesome. I really do, and I think that one of the things with him sometimes is he gives up hard contact, and he does in this game. He gives up a big home run to Jazz Chisholm, which wouldn't have been a huge home run if the Padres had scored a little bit more. They did leave 10 runners on base in this game. But I really think that the thing with Michael King is, I said this last week, I needed to see him have a second straight start in a row, and he did. Hopefully, whoever they end up facing next, he's probably going to catch, let's see here. He's going to miss the Royal start. He's probably going to start coming up against the Angels, so he needs to do well against the Angels. I still just don't trust Michael King enough. I trust the talent. I don't think that this is a guy that we're hoping, turning water into wine. Like, I don't think that this is a guy who has nothing that we're hoping to be good on, as evidenced by the fact that he's always getting this. Called strikes plus whiffs yesterday, 11, right? 34% called strike plus whiff percentage, and then 53% on his fastball. Like, he really had it yesterday, but it was against a bad team, and like I've said before, he's had these blow-up performances that he stinks on, and he gives up some really hard contact and big home runs. It feels almost like he's been the reverse of Yu Darvish. And what I mean by that is that Yu Darvish does give up a lot of hard contact, as we will be talking about in a bit, but he's also made up for it by getting a lot of swings and misses. He hits batters really good with his fastball, all that stuff, right? While Michael King has all this stuff too, but he's just been maybe even unlucky in the home run fly ball rate stuff, right? Like, on the other end of it, there's, Yu Darvish, who has been, until this Yankees start, had not been really getting punished for any of his bad pitches that he hung up in zones and stuff like that. But Michael King was always getting killed with that. But hopefully this is a sign that things are going to change a little bit. I'm really hoping that Michael King gets it down, and maybe he's one of those guys, as a commentator mentioned on this channel before at one point, that he's just turning into a starting pitcher for the first time, so give him a second. And 18.2% home run fly ball rate heading into this game, like, it just shows you, like, that's got to come down at least a little bit, I hope, right? Like, I don't think he's going to be giving up 2 home runs guaranteed, like, every start. I just think that that'd be a little bit crazy. So hopefully you have that going his way. His xFIP is 3.84. Like I said, the stuff is good. I'm really, really hoping that Michael King can turn it around, because if he can, this Padres starting pitching staff is one of the best in the division, if not the best in the National League. And there's been a lot of teams in the National League that have been going backwards in some ways. The Braves, this isn't pitching, but they just lost Ronald Acuna Jr. for the whole year. And that's one thing with the Padres, is they've actually been really, really lucky in health. I know they just lost Xander Bogaerts, but let's be honest, Xander Bogaerts hadn't been doing super well lately, and they have a lot of replacements for him with Arraez. They have Donovan Solano. They've got all that stuff, so there's more lineup depth with this team, so that's really exciting. But of course, that wasn't it. That wasn't it, folks. 2 runs from the Padres in this game, and what's really funny about this one is that it comes from who I just mentioned, Donovan Solano, who has been quietly, like, a pretty good player, by the way, for the Padres in his very brief stint so far. Before this game, heading into it, 308, 419, 346 slash line, so he's not slugging the ball that much, but he's getting hits, and that's all you can ask for, and he's even drawing some walks. Donovan Solano, ever since he figures things out with the Giants, has just been a pure hitter, and this Padres team could use some pure hitting. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that a player like Arraez, I think players like him and Solano, that, yes, what this team is lacking a little bit is home runs. Right now, currently, the Padres are 17th in home runs and they're 13th in slugging percentage. But I'm not really blaming them, because it should be coming from Tatis and Manny Machado. That's kind of the big problem with this team right now, is they're not getting good numbers from those two. But we'll talk about them more in a little bit. Trust me, we'll save more on them. But you get the Donovan Solano home run in the beginning of the game. And then a lot of situations with runners left on base. I will give them some slack in this. I've mentioned this many times. They have one of the highest WRC pluses in the league in high leverage situations. They're top 5 in batting average with runners in scoring position in general. They've been good this year. So I'm not going to hate and be all, why aren't you hitting with runners on base? Like, they've actually been really a lot better in that area this year that I don't want to totally kill them for that. And not to mention Jackson Merrill in this game, he actually has the hardest hit ball of the entire day. Exit velocity of 107.7 miles per hour, expected batting average of 780, and it turns into a lineout. It was with the bases loaded, so it's not like they totally, didn't hit entirely, right? Even he actually got unlucky twice. 106.5 miles per hour. The 5th hardest hit ball of the day also belongs to Jackson Merrill with a 490 expected batting average. So he got a little bit unlucky there. Fernando Tatis Jr. had a 510 expected batting average that turned into a fielder's choice. So that's what happened there. But the reason the Padres are able to come back in this game and get the W is because of a really, really nightmarish, man. Talk about a fall from grace. Bottom of the 7th inning, fall from grace. Tim Anderson making 2 errors that allow the Padres to get the bases loaded. Manny Machado with like a sort of lucking out on that regard. Shocker that Manny Machado didn't hit something well and it was going to be an out. He's just been terrible for the team this year. But then you get Jake Cronenworth. He draws a walk. That means something. Don't get me wrong. But you would prefer some hits. But I'll take the walk, man. I'll take the walk with the bases loaded. And then Robert Super Volcano Man Suarez. My gosh, getting the save. His 15th of the year, folks. Just, man. Or I'm sorry, 16th of the year. Man. We're going to talk about him more in just a second, guys, but I've been taking a lot of time talking about Michael King and dumb stuff, so we got to take a second to talk to you guys about one of our latest and greatest new sponsors here at the Locked On Network, guys. That is Stitch Fix. You know the boost you get from that outfit? You want to look good? Hey, I showed out a little bit Memorial Day weekend, you know what I mean? I had a nice little shirt going on, but let me tell you, with Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. So if you're like me, and if you see me on this show, I'm not exactly a style aficionado. Well, Stitch Fix, they can kind of go with what you want and then give you the best versions of that, right? So that's kind of what they do for you, and it's really awesome. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give them my size, style, and budget preferences, and you order the boxes and you get what you want. I mean, it's pretty simple. That's what I like about them. They sent me a bunch of different stuff as well, and it's fantastic. It's pretty straightforward. And if you don't love something, here's the best thing: just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free, so don't worry. That's how confident Stitch Fix is, man. That's how much they are ready to make you look James Bond up in here. You know what I mean? Because they're like, just send it back if you don't like it. But you will like it because Stitch Fix don't miss, guys. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of signing up, so remember that. But otherwise, go check it out. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, free and available on all platforms. Your team every day. What can I say? Robert Suarez, man, getting the save. He has just been so good. And it's one thing that's funny about him is I remember calling him last year like the X factor on this Padres team. I thought it was him, and I thought it was Ha-Seong Kim. So I was half right on those. But like Robert Suarez, one of the things that I'd been saying in this podcast that longtime listeners might remember is that I did like that contract. Now, again, I've said this. I know I keep saying I've said this, but I just want to catch everybody up that I don't have a problem with like literally any contract the Padres have given out. I just don't like that they did it all at once, where it's like you have Soto on your team and then you did all these extensions when I think I'd rather just take care of Juan Soto first, right? But hey, here's where we are now. The Robert Suarez contract just a year ago, everyone was freaking out. Like, why would you do this again? This guy's going to be the next Pomeranz in the sense that he's going to get hurt. This guy's going to be the next Emilio Pagan. This guy's going to be, he's just going to fall apart, right? And don't get me wrong, I don't like investing heavy in relievers, but what I like that they did, and the reason I liked that contract originally, was because I thought they were making a projection. And maybe they knew about the Josh Hader stuff beforehand. They probably had an idea. And they said, we're going to get this guy 4 years, a lot of money. He'll be a top 15 or so-ish paid reliever, but we think that he's really good and he's not going to cost nearly as much as Josh Hader on the market. And we think we got to at least have one guy, because if we're losing Hader, that's going to be a big loss for our bullpen. So that's kind of why they liked why they did it. He gets hurt last year, isn't generating a lot of whiffs, and he, comes back like really late and wasn't great this year. And that's why him being this good this year has been amazing, along with Jeremiah Estrada as well, has also been very good, although he doesn't make an appearance in this game. But the 8th and 9th had just been really figured out with this Padres bullpen. It's been excellent for a long time. I think it's worth bringing up. Heading into this game, last 30 days, the Padres bullpen, this tweet coming from @TooMuchMoreIns on Twitter, last 30 days for the Padres bullpen, they're 5th in ERA, 6th in field independent pitching FIP, 1st in strike percentage, 7th in walk percentage, 2nd in strikeout to walk percentage, and Stuff Plus, they are 2nd. Stuff Plus is basically a metric that judges and grades individual pitches, like how good they are. You know what I mean? Depending on movement, depending on how nasty they are, that compared to the average, that type of stuff. It's a little bit hard to explain, but basically, a lot of that shows you like the talent of this bullpen is so much better than last year. And AJ Preller management, they do deserve credit for retooling a bullpen and not being able to do it with Josh Hader, right? Like, losing Josh Hader was a big loss for this bullpen, but I think that one thing that happened last year was the Padres bullpen was really bad in high leverage situations. Now, don't get me wrong. They've had some tough moments this year. The Rockies start being the biggest one. Santos and Matsui, they had like a little bit of a dry spell recently. But overall, they've been amazing, and Robert Suarez has been the king of that. Among qualified relief pitchers in Major League Baseball this year, he's 4th in ERA, which is awesome. And none of the guys, or 2 of the guys ahead of him, but a lot of the guys below him who are close to him don't have his level of strikeouts to walks, right? Like, he is just not giving up free passes all that much. And the guy just goes at people. Don't get me wrong, he's still got some things that I don't love, right? Like, he doesn't generate as many whiffs as I would like from someone who throws as hard as him, right? But bottom line is he's just not giving up enough contact. Like, he has not blown a single save this year. I've talked about before, I mean, that'll come at some point. But the fact that it's really hard for players to make consistent contact against him. If they do, it can be bad. Yes, that is true. Like, he has given up runs this year. But the problem is that it's just people can't touch this guy, and he goes after people. He gets guys to chase. He is getting strikeouts at a good rate. He's not walking batters. And while, yes, the whiff rate is down, right? Like, the whiff rate on some of his stuff is down, particularly from, like, that first season, right? Particularly from there. But he's just been a lot more consistent this year. He's throwing the four-seamer with more confidence. He's putting away batters with his sinker. 57.1% of the time he's using his sinker to take out batters, and it's been working so far. I think he's going to regress a little bit. I don't think this guy is going to be one of the best relievers in the league. I still like guys like Emmanuel Clase better. I still like a couple guys on like the Yankees better, who we just faced with like Clay Holmes and stuff like that. But I think that he's just been really, really good. Old friend Nick Martinez, by the way, and Matt Strahm and Kirby Yates, by the way, 7th, 8th, and 9th, respectively, in ERA right now. So those guys have been balling out. Just some former Padres homies. But Robert Suarez just deserves a lot of credit, and he was very good. I don't really know what else to say. I would not pay attention for people who are probably going to look this up. I don't care about wins above replacement for pitchers. The reason I don't care is because Robert Suarez literally has a 0.76 ERA, but then he's 28th in relief pitcher WAR, which is stupid because like some of the guys ahead of him are like Joe Jimenez, who has a 3.15 ERA. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, I understand, but I don't like basing WAR only on expected stats. That's stupid, and that's why I don't like it for pitchers. For positional players, it's okay though. But that does it for that game. Guys, that does it for that game. I feel a little bit bad for Tim Anderson. That is really unfortunate, but still really good stuff here. And then also Adrian Morejon, Stuff Plus King. The fact that he can be a little bit of a long inning reliever really does wonders for this team, by the way. 2 innings for him in this game. Yuki Matsui getting a big couple strikeouts in this one. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. But let's talk a little bit about that Yankee series. Just a little bit. Just a little bit, guys. Because I don't think that there's too much to talk about here. So, for one thing, let's start with the Friday game. And I alluded to this before. Starting off the weekend getting absolutely killed. And while, yes, the Padres lost this one 8-0, there's something about it. And one of the things we talked about on Friday was like, is Carlos Rodon going to be due for a bad start? Apparently not. He doesn't actually pitch all that well, in my opinion, in this game. I think the Padres were a little bit dejected, but I actually don't fully blame them. it's not like they were down by 2 for a lot of the game and then somebody got lit up and then they ended up with 8 runs. No, like it was a pretty close game, and then the third inning arrives and Darvish gets absolutely bombarded. 5 2/3 for him, 7 earned runs, 9 hits, 1 walk, 5 Ks. Thankfully, he was able to go a couple extra innings after getting bombarded, but Stanton, Soto, Judge, all homering in the same inning. Just really, really rough start for Darvish. And one of the things that we talked about on Friday was that he was due a little bit for some hard hit stuff. The Yankees, unfortunately, were the worst possible team for him to face coming into that start because, as I had said, his home run fly ball rate was exceptionally low. So it's the opposite of Michael King, where Michael King's is a little bit too high, so some regression to the mean can be expected / hoped for. But Darvish, I knew that was a thing. But the Yankees are the worst team for you to face when you're a guy who's probably due to give up some home runs with the way you've been pitching. For you to face like one of the best home run and overall offenses in the league, it's just a bad timing start for me. You know what I mean? Like if they were facing the Pirates, maybe Darvish goes six innings and gives up like 4. Right? Like, but then he has some strikeouts. Maybe he gives up like 1 big home run to like Brian Reynolds or O'Neal Cruz, apparently, something like that. But instead it's the Yankees, and that's why he gets absolutely lit up. And it all happens in the third inning. It's 6-0. So it's hard for me to feel like the offense was the problem here. It's bottom line is your starter just got completely nuked into oblivion. I wish that they had hit better against Rodon, who again, I don't think was that good in that game. I think he's due for some more starts in the future. But bottom line is, 3 walks against 2 strikeouts. Padres didn't take advantage. They didn't do well. Gleyber Torres getting a home run in this one as well. Padres offense just didn't show up, but I, for once, don't feel like it's all on them. Although shouts to Manny Machado going 1 for 2 with a walk. We appreciate that, my friend. And Jake Cronenworth going 1 for 2 with a walk, but otherwise not great. Saturday's game. The Padres lose this one as well. 4-1, and it was unfortunate because Dylan Cease didn't have the worst start. He had a weird start, man. He goes 107 pitches, first of all, 6 2/3. He gives up 4 earned runs on 8 hits, but it feels like it's basically just the one big home run, right? Now, don't get me wrong, he gets a little bit touched up in the top of the 4th inning, but his stuff was working, which I really liked. He does give up the Aaron Judge home run. Aaron Judge is like, what can you do? Right, I think he's hit a home run in like 7 straight games or whatever. He's just been absolutely on fire, and having to face Soto stinks. But he did get 2 strikeouts of Soto, which I appreciated. But overall, no walks, 9 Ks. That is like what you look for out of your ace. If your ace is going to have a bad start, the fact that he's not walking anybody, he's striking out 9, that's still pretty great. His whip is super low at 0.96. No worries about him. Yuki Matsui and Enel De Los Santos do their part, but this one more so was a Padres, you guys did not show up. Marcus Stroman in this one, 6 innings, no earned runs on 3 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, 5 Ks. Just not the best start necessarily from Stroman, who I thought was also a guy that the Padres could hit. Although, unlike Rodon, I don't think that he pitched horribly. You know what I mean? Or poorly, I should say. So that was a little bit of a thing. But shouts to Tatis hitting an absolute nuke off of Luke Weaver. But otherwise, that was it from that game. And before we get into last game, the one game that the Padres did win, guys, and I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail and answer a couple of questions. You guys didn't leave me a lot of questions this past week, except for some troll comments, like people shouldn't be hosting podcasts. What was it? I know you had like a black and white picture on YouTube. You were like, yeah, not everybody should host podcasts. I agree, by the way. I agree. But anyway, guys, before we get into the questions and analyzing this last game of the Yankees series, I want to take a quick second to talk about our OG partners, right? They've been part of this podcast for a long time, and that is Game Time. And I love using Game Time. I used them to go to a game about a month ago. It's fantastic. They've got flash deals, zone deals, flash deals like up until the moment. You know what I mean? Maybe let's say, let's say you find out you have off and you're like, man, I found out late though. Like, I wish I could go to a Petco game. I really want to go. That would be so fun. Let's keep that home attendance second best in the league, right? Let's do that. But don't worry. Game Time, they give you deals up until the moment, and you can also sell your tickets and get the difference back if you find them in that zone for a better price. So don't worry. Like, look, there's so many things that they've got here. Lowest price is guaranteed, and they take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. But if you don't want MLB tickets, they've got other high-profile events. They've got comedy, haha. They've got theater, ha-ha. They've got concerts. They got all sorts of sports stuff. WNBA's in session. NHL playoffs are on. NBA playoffs are on. So don't worry. They've got it all covered. So go check out Game Time, guys. It is fantastic. Use the app features listed and customize your spot. Folks, you get all sorts of stuff. They can customize it for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's fantastic. I love it. I love Game Time. I've loved it for a long time. So go check it out, guys. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB after you download the app and create an account. And if you use that code, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. You know how to spell it. You're listening to this podcast. You know how Locked On is spelled. For $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest prices. Guaranteed. With Game Time. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on Locked On Padres podcast. Your team every day. Free and available on all platforms. Let's finish this up. Let's talk about the last game. The game that I was able to just chill out and enjoy, my Memorial Day weekend. The Padres win this one 5-2. And there was, what's interesting about this game is that the Padres just had a huge bottom of the sixth inning. It was pretty bad for most of the game. The Padres were having this vibe of, oh no, are they going to get swept? And I know this sounds weird, but considering that they are now once again back to being one game over 500, I really think winning this game was a big deal. Like, to salvage the series, end on a high note, and they did. They win 5-2. The Yankees had, was it Clark Schmidt? Clark Schmidt finally looks a little bit mortal, giving up 2 runs, 1 earned on 3 walks and 6 Ks. But really, the Padres got into the bullpen of the Yankees, and the Yankees have the best bullpen in baseball this year so far. So that meant a lot. Bottom of the 6th inning, the Padres just go absolutely nuts, scoring a bunch. Jackson Merrill gets a fielder's choice. Kim gets an RBI single. Ha-Seong Kim, by the way, having a little bit of signs, I think. He's not tapping into the power. He's not pulling balls, especially at Petco, which is something that I think he found out last year. His regression offensively, personally, I think was a little bit expected. Part of the reason why I was a little bit pro-trading him this offseason. But I'm just not too worried because at the very minimum, he's such a plus defender. It's not that his offense doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter quite as much. And he's been really, really good lately. He's got a 106 WRC plus on the season, which might surprise you guys. 1.5 F4. The defense is the thing. And the big thing also, by the way, he's walking. He's actually walking a good amount. So that's nice. 14.5% walk rate this year. And as a 9-hitter who's just an average to slightly above average offensive player who plays electric defense, that's all you can ask for. So I know I have gotten a lot of comments. We're going to be talking about questions in a second. I've gotten some saying like, hey, what happened to Kim? Was one that I got a DM this weekend. Like, what's going on? Like him, Bogarts, Machado, Tatis. I wouldn't put Kim in that area. I just think Kim is an awesome utility player that every team in the league could use. And if you get anything out of him offensively, it's a plus. But that's how good his defense is. It really is. And he's been better lately. So shouts to him with the RBI. Luis Arraez getting a single too. Arraez, and then Tatis also gets an RBI in this one. Manny Machado gets a double, which was nice. The Luis Arraez, I really feel like there's been this vibe that he's not that great for the Padres. One, we talked about this last week because he has grounded into like 4 double plays already for the team. But mostly it's just that he's not as thrilling as a leadoff hitter when he's always left on base. He's giving a little bit of that Soto vibe last year, where the difference is that Arraez just getting a single is all you can ask for, while Soto, you're hoping for some extra base hits. But Soto would draw walks a lot last year, obviously, and then just never be brought home. So it felt like you were being a waste, and you're like, oh, this guy ain't that good. So it's like this weird disconnect where because they're not driving him in as much as they should, it feels like he's not as good. But Arraez has been absolutely phenomenal for the Padres. 391 batting average since joining the Padres with a 418 on base, 471 slugging, which is really, really, in my opinion, the most impressive thing. If he can just hit for a modicum of power, he's got 4 doubles already. That's huge. Just a modicum of it. Now, don't get me wrong. He did hit 1 home run for the Padres, which is not going to keep up, but the guy's just a beast. And I think on this team, a spark plug player like that, especially if the bottom of their order, whether it be Luis Campusano, whether it be Ha-Seong Kim, whether it be Jackson Merrill, the bottom of the order, if they can like continue to produce, that would be huge for this team. Like absolutely huge. And even a David Peralta has been okay. Not great, but okay. Give him a little bit more time. He's only played 5 games, but he's had at least a couple moments. So I just like that this Padres lineup has depth. They just need the stars to produce, which they haven't. And then Joe Musgrove had an okay start in this one. 5 1/3. 5 1/3 gives up 6 hits, but only 1 earned run. Bent but did not break. 0 walks, 5 Ks. 0 walks was the most important thing for me of this start. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think that Musgrove, I really do think that he was on the right track before he had gotten injured. I really, really do believe that deep in my bones. I just thought that he had like a really rough stretch. I think he was genuinely still hurt. And I think we saw that because ever since he was hurt and been shut down, that's when the struggles have been happening. And we saw before he got shut down that he was really, really good for the Padres last year. So I'm not super worried about him. His velo was okay. It wasn't amazing, but he did max out a couple times. His max velocity, 93.4% miles per hour on the fastball. That's usually what we come to expect of him. Not a lot of whiffs, but the curve had a little bit of bite of it. 4 whiffs on 8 swings. He's not fully back, but I do think he's going to get better. I'm just not super worried about him because I really do think that it's injury related. And in his case, I think more time, he's going to get better. So I think this Padres rotation has room to grow. I really do. So a great start from him. Robert Suarez actually gives up some runs in this game, which is what I was talking about before, where I like that he's given up runs this year when it was okay. You know what I mean? He gives up 1 earned run in this game. He goes 1 1/3, which is part of it. So I really love that he gave up some runs yesterday, got it out of his system, and then we had the game yesterday in which he gave up nothing against the Marlins. So that was awesome. But yeah, Suarez is awesome. This team has been awesome. Some other notes that are worth talking about. Before we get into some questions, I did get a question about the stars and whatnot with the Padres. I want to mention this. I'm not using specifics because I got like a bunch of like comments from a few people that were all asking the same thing this week. There's 2 of them, right? That is the superstars on the Padres this year and then Jurickson Profar. Let's start with the superstars. Manny Machado, because Xander Bogaerts is hurt, so we're not going to talk about him. Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr., their last 30 games. Tatis, he's slashing .222 with a .305 on base and a .350. Slugging percentage, 97 WRC+. plus. Manny, .216, .254, .310 for a 66 WRC+. plus. Not counting yesterday's stats, but they've been bad. I've said it before that Tatis has actually shown, based on numbers, that he should be better, but I have to admit that even as someone who does like using numbers on this show, and I think that they're very important, especially for judging what's legit and what's not, and not just going scoreboard watching and not being a Mike Wilbon and saying that all this stuff is useless because I don't work anymore and I don't like to work anymore and I'm settled in my ways. Tatis's expected numbers are good, but they're not out of this world, in my opinion. He's got a 370 expected weighted on base and a 330 weighted on base. So he's getting a little bit unlucky. And I mentioned last week that his slugging on fastballs this year is 390, and he's got an expected slug of 559 on fastballs. His weighted on base against fastballs is 342 and an expected weighted on base of 421. That is such a difference that, in theory, yes, they should be hoping on it, but it feels like pitchers know what to throw him when as a put away pitch. You know, it feels like they kind of hit him well. Off speed, outside, it really does feel like they've been hitting him bad this year. Now, don't get me wrong. He's been making contact. Yes, he's been whiffing on breaking pitches a little bit much for my liking this year, but he's been making contact. All the expected stats, with the exception of breaking pitches, like I said on off-speed stuff, I swear that's what they like doing, is throwing sinkers outside, sliders outside, on a strike 2 or whatever. And if he makes contact, it's, you know, it's just not falling in, or he's striking out. Like, it just feels like that's been the case with him this year. His launch angle on off-speed pitches isn't great either. At just 1, by the way. That happens, but there's such a difference that I have to hope that he's going to be better. But I have to admit, at some point, I can't just keep waiting on expected stats. So we'll see what happens with Tatis, but man, it's really frustrating. And then Manny Machado, I don't know, guys. I just mentioned that Musgrove had the injury last year. That explains things. I don't know when Machado got his elbow issue, but he was also bad before he got the surgery. So that's why with Machado, I don't know how much of this is necessarily tied to just the injury. Not striking out and walking at a commensurate rate the way that he usually was. I don't know. I don't know. Does make a couple nice defensive plays in the Marlins game, though. That was nice. But he's been really struggling. Moving on, though, to Jurickson Profar before we answer some more specific questions. There was a really great piece by a good friend of mine, Davey Andrews, who does fantastic work. And he did a really great article basically saying that this is probably going to come down, that Profar's plate discipline is a little bit weird. His outside contact percentage is 66.2% compared to an average of 70.6 from his previous years. He's basically, any of the pitches that he should be hitting, he's making contact, and then he's not making contact on pitches outside the zone. It just doesn't seem like he's going to continue it, right? This just does not seem that that's going to keep up. According to StatCast, Profar's swing take decisions have been worth 21 runs, just the second time in his career that it's been a positive number. That's the 5th highest mark in baseball, and it slots him right between Mookie Betts and Juan Soto. However, according to Seager, which is we'll leave it at that. Profar's swing decisions put him in the 19th percentile. Right now, I just want to see a bigger sample size. That's how I feel too, but I really recommend reading the article because he breaks down like this isn't Eric Hosmer. Eric Hosmer in 2021, and I said on this show, everything was on the ground. The hard hit wasn't changing. He wasn't walking more. The launch angle wasn't great. All that stuff. So who cares if he was batting .330 to start that season? What happened? Fell into a pit, right? Unless you're Ichiro Suzuki, that wasn't going to keep up. With Profar, you can't fake everything, which again, I recommend checking out the article. Just Google Jurickson Profar and then go to that news thing. It's on Fangraphs. It's by Davey Andrews, a good friend of mine. Go check that out. Did a great write-up. So that'll explain things better than me because I'm not very smart, as you guys know. But looking into just a couple of the questions that I got this week, just a couple comments. First of all, I want to mention my boy, Hope Springs Eternal, still commenting on my channel for some reason. Wow, you refused to do a show on how the Padres won yesterday. That proves you are an enemy of the Padres. Why did you not do a show on how the Padres won yesterday? Horrible. Here's a much better podcast of the Padres for those who don't know them. A lot of exclamation points. You're commenting on my channel like the Trump tweets. Just sad, like all that stuff. Once again, I missed yesterday's episode, holiday, and then I did not do one on Thursday. That one I was just a little bit sick. I couldn't. So my apologies on that, guys. And then in general, we're Monday through Friday. We don't do Saturday and Sunday. Although I might be doing some more like YouTube shorts just to put out some content, especially if it's a big win or if a big news event happens. Then look forward to that. But otherwise, whatever. Tony Sue, a frequent commenter on this channel. I always enjoy your analysis. At Tony Sue 8860 says, if anybody's harping on Arraez, it's not rational. Arraez has been getting on base and even mostly by hits, not walks. He's giving batters after him plenty of opportunities to generate rallies and knock in runs. It's the guys before and after Arraez. Kim is working his way through his troubles, but the 9th spot can be really important. Turning the lineup over and the batters after Arraez, it's been uneven. Call it bad luck or bad hitting. Maybe a little bit of both, but not the whole problem. Agreed. I'm not worried super much about Kim for all the reasons I illustrated before, and it really is the stars. You haven't got anything out of Bogaerts, who's now hurt, so we're probably not going to get anything from Bogaerts for maybe even the rest of this year, frankly, unless the Padres are able to make a playoff run. And then Tatis and Machado, right? So that's been the problem. I don't know. They gotta show up, man. It's been really frustrating. But yeah, the Arraez stuff, I don't know. I don't think too many people are complaining. I don't think. I'm curious to see if they make another move. That's what I'm curious about. They have the depth. They have the farm system. Preller's insane. They might make another move for a hitter. And if they do, it needs to be for power, probably in this case, because apparently the two biggest power hitters on the team are not hitting for power anymore. So you might have to do that. Lastly, though, from Ramen Murdy, longtime listener of the podcast. Hi, Javi. Happy Memorial Day weekend, you and your family. Same thing to you, sir. And same thing to everybody who's been listening to this podcast. Questions for Monday's show. If you were managing the Padres, what would you do to get them to play better at home? With the Bogaerts injury, does it make sense to bring up Eggy Rosario and let him play and keep Cronenworth at first and Arraez at DH? So first of all, if I were managing, my only thing is it's got to be mental at this point that they just can't play well at Petco. I just think it's weird. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a more hitter-friendly or a pitcher-friendly ballpark. But still, like, it's just they don't show up, this team. And it's the Rockies series is what sticks out to me with an offense just not producing and showing up. I'll never, that friggin' sweep, the Manny Machado ground out with like, that was just unbelievable. I'll never get over it. I think it's a mental thing. It has to be like that. They just, when the lights get brightest, they just don't seem to show up. I don't know what it is. But in terms of the second part of your question about Bogaerts, I'd be curious to give Eggy another shot. If for the fact that Firstly, I kind of like that there's a lot of interesting defensive alignments that the team can do. I kind of think it's interesting that they can toy with their lineup a whole bunch, that they can put Arraez at first and then put Cronenworth at second the way they did yesterday. I think it's cool. I don't personally like moving Cronenworth back to second at this point, only because he's been great at first, and he's also been hitting really well, something I did not expect. The reason I wanted to move the second is because I did not know that the bat would come back like this. And not to mention, he's been playing amazing at first base. He's like top percentile and outs above average, all that stuff. So I'm not a big fan of that. But bottom line is I like that they can mix and match. They can move the defensive stuff all around. They can play Solano at third base every now and then. I think Solano is probably going to be the DH most of the time. But Eggy Rosario, I think the case for calling him up would be this team has been really bad against lefties this year. Outside Eggy Rosario, and it's been weird because career-wise, most of these guys don't have splits issues, with the exception of Jay Cronenworth. So that's been weird. We thought this year that lefties could give this team a couple of issues every now and then, but I'm really surprised by that. They haven't been good there, so maybe Eggy Rosario deserves a little bit of a chance, even if maybe he got a little bit lucky in some of his at-bats, because he's slow as he's slugging like 2,000, but he hasn't drawn a walk or whatever. I love that dude. I'd definitely be curious to give him a little bit more of an opportunity, but for now, I'm not pushing it because I do like Solano. I do like what they can do with that possibility there. I just think that I think David Peralta, maybe if he doesn't perform, who has been a guy who has been a pretty consistent, just solid hitter for the most part, although he wasn't very good last year. So I'm actually curious to see how short the leash will be on David Peralta. Could he become the new Tyler Wade, where we're all getting mad at him getting at bats over guys that probably deserve more of a chance, like your Eggy, a young guy like him? I'd see. I want to give it a little bit more time, but I'd prefer at this point, if they continue to struggle against lefties, I'd like to bring up Eggy Rosario instead of just continuing on David Peralta, who had a 294 on base last year. Like, he might just be officially cooked. So we'll see how that goes. But until that next time, guys, we'll just have to see. Lastly, I want to mention this. Padres, upcoming schedule. This is it. I am not a schedule person. I think strength of schedule is baloney in baseball. I do not care who it is. You have to win consistently. Unless it's like, you start out the gate playing Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, and your team is 2-10, then it's like, okay, maybe that. But in general, I just don't look into that. You play the Marlins, then you play the Royals, who are actually, unfortunately, quite good this year. I think that's worth mentioning. They're 34-21. They're pretty legit. Then you get the Angels. The D-backs have been faltering. Corbin Carroll is just lost at the plate right now. Then you play the A's. Then you play the Mets. Then you play the Phillies. Okay, but that's a lot of very beatable teams. So outside the Royals, there's basically no above average, like really good team that the Padres play for a little bit. So you need to do well. And hey, it's tough. One of the things that I've said, and I joked about this, but I swear it makes sense, is that the Padres have a better chance to win the World Series than make the playoffs, apparently. That's what it feels like. That should not make sense, but it's true. They can make some noise if they make the postseason. But if you aren't winning against bad teams consistently, if you just aren't winning games consistently, you keep doing this thing where we're all joking about how, hey, they're back to above 500. Oh, they're back below it. Oh, they're back again. You can't stay in this no man's land all year, especially with so many things that are going right for the team, from starting pitching to an amazing bullpen improvements, from Estrada to Suarez to Matsui to Santos to Monajon, and then you've got Cronenworth, and then you've got God and Jurickson Profar. You need to be better, need to win more consistently. So that's why I make that joke, but it's true. It's true. So we're gonna have to see, guys. We're gonna have to see. This has been a very chunky filled episode because I've missed episodes for a little bit. It's been a while since I've talked to you guys, so that's why. But all in all, hopefully they can perform. This is a big stretch. If they keep being inconsistent against these bad teams, then we can talk. But until then, keep the faith in what you're seeing with the numbers and maybe even my occasionally okay analysis, and believe that it's going to happen. Believe a little bit. Come on, I can do it. But until that next time, guys, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies. Take care.